Amen.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda DXKS Surigao, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Mai Rodriguez, sitting in for Pia Ontiveros. Tonight on the program, even with an uptick in COVID-19 infections, the government is keeping the alert level system. But Filipinos can expect changes by next month. Transport authorities want more buses on the EDSA busway, but with delays in payments to bus companies, it appears this is easier said than done. And happy news for Blinks. A member of K-pop group Blackpink will soon debut as an actress in Hollywood. We begin with this. The COVID-19 alert level system will stay at least for now. But President Bongbong Marcos wants to separate the alert levels from restrictions, which will be reclassified based on current milder strains. During their meeting yesterday, health officials informed the president that they could come up with new alert level classifications by mid-August. Mr. Marcos also points out the alert level could be adjusted if more people will get their COVID shots or COVID booster shots. In the meantime, the health department is reconstituting the agencies under the interagency task force and limited to those with relevant and intended functions. The task force leads in COVID-19 response efforts. Health Officer in Charge, Maria Rosario Vergeres, says the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council platform will replace the National Task Force against COVID-19. With rising COVID cases and the threat of more transmissible variants, the Health Department plans to ramp up booster vaccination in the first 100 days of the Marcos administration. As Carolyn Bongkin reports, the private sector also renews calls to expand the second booster vaccination as a bulk of vaccines are set to expire this month.
Mercy Gabronino is already fully vaccinated, but she and her husband want their doctor's go signal before getting a COVID-19 booster shot.
Nakapacheck po kami sa sa doktor para alam namin na nakaya niya yung side effect.
Mercy is among the 49.7 million fully vaccinated Filipinos who have yet to get a booster shot. Health Officer in Charge, Maria Rosario Vergeres, says government aims to give booster shots to 23 million Filipinos within the first 100 days of President Marcos in office. But how? They have yet to lay out their plan. As vaccination lags, a former presidential advisor for entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion, renewing calls to allow a second booster to privately employed 50 years and older. Over 1.5 million AstraZeneca and Moderna doses the private sector bought are expiring by end of the month. Each AstraZeneca shot cost $5 and Moderna $27.
That's a lot of money, no? America is already giving the booster shots to the 50 years old. And now they're reviewing that the second booster can just be given to everybody, no? Shouldn't we follow what CDC is doing?
Aside from giving a second booster, infectious disease specialist Ron Jean Solantes says the new administration should also prioritize getting next-generation vaccines or those developed against a specific variant.
If BA5 will still be circulating and we don't have much antibody against the BA5, there will always be episodes of cases.
A preliminary study published in the Nature Scientific Journal shows Omicron subvariants BA4 and 5 are 4 times more resistant to current vaccines and more likely to cause infection among vaccinated and those who already had COVID. Solantes says this could mean a need for second booster for all adults 18 years and older.
Giving fourth dose will also increase the neutralizing antibody. Getting the vaccine will still protect us against the severe infections, especially given the booster vaccine.
In past weeks, BA.5 has been the most commonly detected variant in the country. Experts say this is driving the new surge. Dr. Solantes says even if cases decline, there could still be pockets of spikes in cases till end of the year with Omicron subvariant BA.5 circulating. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
Meanwhile, Octa Research Fellow Guido David says COVID-19 infections in Metro Manila could have already peaked.
Bilang ng mga nagpa-positive sa testing, yung pinakamataas ng July 15 at bumaba na ng July 16 at 17. Kung magtuloy-tuloy ito, baka pababa na yung trend natin sa Metro Manila.
Calabarzon, Central Luzon, and Western Visayas could follow, but infections in other provinces are still on the rise. Now on to another health-related concern. The health department has recorded over 16,300 cases of dengue in just a month. That's from June 5th to July 2nd. This figure represents 25% of the total tally of 65,190 cases recorded since the start of the year. Most of these new cases were found in Central Luzon, Metro Manila, and Central Visayas. So far, 13 out of 17 regions already exceeded the epidemic threshold, with Central Luzon, Mimaropa, Bicol, Western Visayas, the Zamboanga Peninsula, the Davao region, Soc-Sargen, Bangsamoro, and the Cordilleras showing a sustained rising trend from June 5th to July 2nd. Health experts can attest to the data. The Private Hospitals Association President, Dr. Jose Rene de Grano, says their medical facilities in Central Luzon, parts of Calabarzon, the Visayas, and the Zamboanga Peninsula have seen an increase in admissions because of dengue. Dr. de Grano, however, says dengue cases in these areas are now controllable. The rise in dengue cases is only one effect of climate change. This National Disaster Resilience Month, the Science and Technology Department introduces innovations and projects that can help the country go through storms and other disasters. Tristan Nodalo gives us a look.
From floods, typhoons, and volcanic eruptions to earthquakes, landslides, and tsunamis, the Philippines is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. In a webinar on Tuesday, the Science and Technology Department highlighted the importance of new research and development projects in addressing these threats.
These initiatives will, of course, add to our arsenal of projects, knowledge, and experiences in our fight against the elements, and we have been able to save more lives.
Project SHIPS is a pioneering study on the occurrence of marine heat waves in the Philippines. If unmonitored, these heat waves can lead to the loss of marine biodiversity and ecosystems in the country. The heat waves are also linked to coral bleaching and harmful algal bloom.
In the next quarters, we will be focusing on spatio-temporal analysis, developing seasonal forecasting models, and creating a toolbox such as Marine Heatwaves Tracker that can be used in disaster risk reduction.
Meanwhile, two new initiatives focus on monitoring active volcanoes and improving communication after every natural disaster through drone technology. The collaborative aerial ground unmanned system for exploration and monitoring of active volcanoes combines the use of a robot and drone in monitoring volcanic activities. Project Exceed, on the other hand, uses drone networks to activate communication even without internet or cell phone signals.
Drones are used to connect several branches of government from one point to another. For example, we're trying to connect, let's say, the fire department as well as the police, the hospitals, and so on.
The DOST also introduced Project SWIM, or the Smart Water Infrastructure Management System, to maximize the use of existing water resources and address the problems of flooding in urban cities. One of the projects presented was the Smart Irrigation System.
Hindi na nangangailangan ng interbensyon ng tao. Ibig sabihin, habang nababasa ng mga water level sensors na nakakabit sa mga palayan na mayroon pang tubig, mananatiling nakasara ang mga ditch gate at farm gate controllers.
Other new technologies seek to address an efficient collection of storm water and improving the drainage system. The DOST hopes more support will be given to these innovations that can help the country become a disaster-resilient nation. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Up next on Newsnight, some roadblocks for transport officials and their plans to reduce long lines at the EDSA bus carousel. Plus, from alternate routes to security preparations, we look at arrangements for President Marcos's first State of the Nation address. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
Out there. Buti na lang there's locally superfoods with 3 kinds of fruits that are super in many ways. First, there's our dragon fruit drink na mayaman sa prebiotics that aid digestion. Second, there's our passion fruit drink with no added sugar and high in vitamin C. Lastly, we have our mangosteen drink, good for your heart. All superfruits contain more antioxidants than your average fruit to help protect your immune system. Superfruit for super you.
Ang isa pang tinutulong po kasi ng mga construction projects, bukod po doon sa mga construction sectors, once natapos na po lahat ng proyekto, it attracts investments, and more investments would mean more employment opportunities for all of us.
It is one of the purposes of San Miguel Infrastructure to provide more jobs to our fellow Filipino workers through these infrastructure projects. Partnering with local contractors means supporting the Philippine workforce as a whole, since these projects, big or small, truly help and provide jobs.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Transport authorities are vowing to address long lines of commuters on the EDSA busway. When will relief come? Melissa Lopez takes us closer to the scene.
If you're a frequent commuter on the EDSA bus carousel, you must have gotten used to packing a lot of patience for the long wait. It's a virtue that comes with a free ride. Transport regulators admit Monday mornings and Friday nights are the worst time to take the EDSA busway. Rush hours for the rest of the week are no different, but midday trips are a breeze. This commuter wakes up at 4 a.m. and lines up to get to work in Cubao, Quezon City on time.
Pila po talaga. Ngayon, 7, kasi pasok ko 9. Kahapon umabot ako ng mga 45 minutes. Sobrang nakatipid. Kaya malaking tulong din.
For many commuters, the EDSA carousel is their only option. The Transportation Department has banned jeepneys on the highway. LTFRB wants bus companies under the program to deploy a full force of 440 buses during rush hour against the current 200 units. The problem appears to be LTFRB's own doing. Payments to bus companies are more than a month behind, worth nearly 400 million pesos.
Hindi naman kami nangako na talagang magkakaroon kami ng maraming dispatch kasi depende rin naman po yan doon sa payouts na pinangako rin naman nila sa amin na ipapacilitate nila kasi long overdue na po yung mga payouts. Meron lang magbabayaran 2 linggo. Pag hinawakan mo sa kamay yun, ubos agad yun.
LTFRB says it is trying to settle its dues by end July.
Ang dami kasi nating in-implement na libreng sakay program. Nationwide po siya. So talagang na-overwhelm din yung mga empleyado dito. Talagang ayusin namin. And then once maayos namin talagang sisingilin namin sila on the deployment. Kasi wala na silang reason why they would not be deploying up to their full capacity.
Other plans include allowing buses to accept standing room passengers when there's high demand, but regulators will have to clear this first with IATF because of rising COVID-19 cases. The agency is also eyeing potential staging areas for buses close to Monumento in Caloocan City, the beginning of the busway line, for easy deployment. Bus firms will meet with transport officials for a second time on July 21st to resolve these issues. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
A new survey by Pulse Asia reveals more Filipinos are growing dissatisfied with the K-12 program. With the Marcos administration now reviewing K-12, what are some of the basic problems plaguing the system? AC Nichols has this story.
Ayumi Cuison is an incoming grade 10 student. She says she cannot wait to finish her studies so she can get a job and start helping out at home. If not for K-12, Ayumi would have graduated from high school this year.
Para mabilis na po mag-college, makapagtrabaho.
Her mom Edith agrees. Edith believes the K-12 system should be scrapped. She says the longer her kids stay in school, the harder it is on their budget.
Yung ipon na gagastos hanggang kasi dalawa sila nag-aaral ng ng grade 9. Parang hindi ako nakakapag-maintain ng budget.
The K-12 system was first implemented in 2012. It requires students to complete 6 years in elementary, 4 years in junior high school, and another 2 years in senior high. It's supposed to better prepare students for tertiary education and employment. There has been a growing sentiment against the K-12 program's implementation over the years. A recent Pulse Asia survey shows 44% are not satisfied with the system, higher than the 28% result in 2019. The Teachers' Dignity Coalition is not surprised. The group says K-12 reforms are ineffective as government fails to address key issues in basic education, such as lack of classrooms and school personnel.
Parang hindi naman sineryoso ito ng ating gobyerno, no? Hindi naman pinondohan yung dapat na pondohan, ano?
President Bongbong Marcos has directed the Education Department to review the K-12 system. The Alliance of Concerned Teachers believes K-12 could work, but only with proper funding.
Halimbawa, gagawa yung bata ng welding. Pag-weldingin mo yung bata, and yet wala namang materyales. Pag-aaralin mo ng automotive, wala namang sasakyan, aayusin nila yung mga tools na kailangan nila. Gagawa sila ng halimbawa ng mga alak or mga coffee. Wala naman sila mga ingredients. Bibilin pa ng mga magulang.
Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte said the review of the K-12 system is ongoing.
Natapos po ng previous administration ng ating pong butihing Secretary Briones ang review ng kinder to grade 10, and then nautos ko na po verbally sa loob ng Department of Education ang review ng grades 11 to 12.
AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
President Marcos is open to pursuing government-to-government talks for cheaper fertilizers. The president, who is also Agriculture Secretary, met with his department Monday. Mr. Marcos is looking to procure fertilizers through negotiations with China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Russia, and the United Arab Emirates. The chief executive also said he wants to prioritize farm-to-market roads, or roads that connect agricultural areas with market towns. He vowed to make food affordable for all. We are counting down the days to the first State of the Nation address, where President Marcos is expected to lay down his key programs and policies. Chrissy Di Matulak walks us through the preparations for July 25th.
The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority has identified alternate routes for President Bongbong Marcos's first State of the Nation address. Roads leading to the Batasang Pambansa are still open less than a week from the President's first State of the Nation address. Motorists are advised to take designated alternate routes as traffic is expected to get heavy. For motorists who are northbound or who will be coming from the Quezon Memorial Circle to Fairview, they can take North Avenue, turn right at Mindanao Avenue, then right to Sauyo Road or take Quirino Highway, then Commonwealth Avenue to reach their destination. For motorists who are southbound or those from Fairview to Quezon Memorial Circle, from Commonwealth Avenue, they can turn left at Mindanao Avenue, then turn left at North Avenue to reach their destination. Meanwhile, all trucks coming from C5 along Katipunan Avenue should take the Luzon flyover, then turn left at Congressional Avenue to reach their destination. A zipper lane will also be implemented or counterflow on the southbound portion of Commonwealth Avenue to give way to vehicles of government officials and guests going to the complex. MMDA officer in charge Baltasar Melgar said that 1,133 personnel will be deployed. Ambulances, tow trucks, fire trucks, mobile patrol units, and motorcycle units, among others, will also be deployed at designated routes and staging areas. Meantime, police have not detected any threat leading to the big day. Despite this, police assured that they will be on high alert.
Yung 21,000 or actually 21,853 ma'am, yan po ay yung kabuuan na po na deployment po natin dito po sa NCR po. Hindi lang po siya nakafocus actually yan ma'am sa ating Batasan Complex, kundi kasama na po yan ma'am yung ating mga standby forces at saka yung ating mga anti-criminality operations po na mga personnel na magkakandak na anti-criminality operation at saka yung ating mga personnel din ma'am na naka-deploy po dun sa ating mga 34 border control points, yung mga manggagaling po sa boundary ng Region 3 and Region 4 po.
According to the National Capital Region Police Office, talks with other agencies started last week, and they will be finalizing other details to make sure that everything goes smoothly. Chrissy De Matulak, CNN Philippines.
The 19th Congress opens in the morning of July 25th, the same day as the SONA. The Senate and the House of Representatives will hold separate sessions where lawmakers may elect a new Senate President and Speaker and committee chairpersons. Leyte 1st District Representative Martin Romualdez earlier said Congress will prioritize the 2023 budget. While the 19th Congress has yet to hear the priority measures of the President, CNN Philippines revisits key legislations passed by senators in the previous Congress. Amor Santos breaks them down in this report.
From relaxing restrictions on foreign investors to an agency that caters to our kababayans overseas, senators rose up to the occasion to deliver on key legislation. It's now easier for foreigners to do business in the country thanks to amendments to the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, Foreign Investments Act, and Public Service Act. To set up shop in the country, foreign retailers only need a paid-up capital of 25 million pesos, just a fifth of the original amount. Non-Filipinos can invest in more local enterprises and even enjoy full ownership in telecommunications, airports and airlines, railways, tollways and expressways, and domestic shipping.
In this bid to liberalize our economy, we have taken national security into consideration. We have recognized that certain industries are critical infrastructure, thus transactions resulting in the control of such industries are subject to several layers of safeguards like telecommunications.
The Senate passed around 400 bills, of which half have been signed into law. The Anti-Terrorism Act survived a constitutional challenge at the Supreme Court. The age of sexual consent has been raised from 12 to 16 years old, and a new agency was created, the Migrant Workers Department, still awaiting the President's signature, a separate facility for inmates convicted of heinous crimes, tighter protection against online sexual abuse of children.
Well, hindi ko ma-imagine kung bakit hindi pa pala na pirmahan, pero hindi man pirmahan, posible talagang mag-lapse into law dahil wala ring dahilan na i-veto yan.
And and a contested bill regulating vape, among others.
It was a bill masquerading as a health bill. So niloloko nila yung mga tao. Yun ang totoo nun.
The Blue Ribbon Committee took more than 5 months to investigate alleged corruption involving government medical supplier Pharmaly, but majority of its members did not sign the committee report at the mention of possible charges against Duterte. Senators promise an independent institution despite a supermajority in the 19th Congress. Beyond writing laws, they should keep the system of checks and balance alive for effective governance under the Marcos administration. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Tune in to CNN Philippines as we bring you the opening of the 19th Congress live on Monday, July 25th, beginning at 9:30 in the morning. Don't miss our special coverage of the President's first sauna from 2 p.m. onwards. In world headlines, China reports almost 700 new COVID-19 cases, the highest since May. A number of cities are under partial or full lockdown as Omicron BA.5 cases increase. China is also dealing with a heat wave with temperatures soaring to as high as 42 degrees Celsius. The United Kingdom sees its third hottest day as a deadly heat wave sweeps parts of Europe. UK's temperatures rose to 37 degrees Celsius on Monday. Other European countries are hitting new heat records with wildfires raging in France and Spain and a drought in Portugal. The United Nations warns half of humanity could be in the danger zone as high temperatures and wildfires spread across Europe. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres met with representatives from 40 countries to discuss climate protection measures.
This has to be the decade of decisive climate action. That means trust, multilateralism, and collaboration. We have a choice, collective action or collective suicide. It is in our hands.
And exclusive on CNN, Sri Lanka's acting president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, says the past administration was covering up facts about the financial crisis. He says the former president did not admit the South Asian nation was bankrupt and needed the help of the International Monetary Fund. The former prime minister, whom protesters wanted out, is now vying to be Sri Lanka's next president. Sports and entertainment news straight ahead. A quarterfinal spot is at stake in tonight's FIBA Asia Cup game between the Philippines and Japan. And get ready, Blinks. Blackpink's Jennie is set to show off her acting chops for the first time in an American series. Details when we come back.
My faith in God led me to all these blessings. Kaya ako, all out sa lahat ng bigay ng Panginoon. Spirit, mind, and body. Sa tulong ng exercise, healthy diet, and MSU+. Sabi ng tatay ko, when you put God first, you will always be first. MSU+ with CoQ10 and L-carnitine, my plus to life.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 Plus ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Fried chicken? Timplang happy! With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Timplados. Iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Anong Magnolia Chicken Timplados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap.
Now it's time to live the life. Let's have sun make life with the sun out. Any hour is now happy hour. Ang katapusan ng bawat kwento, may inuumpisa ang bago. Get into the life.
Sun make light.
This is Newsnight. Will Gilas Pilipinas make it to the FIBA Asia Cup quarterfinals? Just a few hours until we find out. Facing off at 9 p.m., the Philippines and Japan are in a knockout game in Indonesia. Both teams hope to bounce back after losses on Sunday, with Gilas bowing to New Zealand and Iran beating Japan. Setting off to outer space, European astronomers found a mysterious type of black hole outside the Milky Way for the first time. The small spot you see is a dormant stellar mass black hole in a neighboring galaxy. This kind of black hole does not emit high levels of X-ray radiation, making it hard to detect. To find it, scientists spent 6 years on the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope. In entertainment, Jennie of Blackpink is set to make her debut as an actress right in Hollywood. After much speculation, TV network HBO confirms Jennie was cast in its new drama series, The Idol. This makes her the first K-pop artist to act in an HBO show. The Blackpink vocalist was also spotted in the series teaser, which dropped yesterday. The Idol features other big names in music like The Weeknd and Troye Sivan. And that's it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Mai Rodriguez for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Kini ang simbianan sa RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKS. DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda 5,000 watts nagsimbiya sa ikatulong andana sa UFCO Lim Building, Borromeo Street, Dakbayan sa Surigao. RPN Radio Philippines Network DXKS 1080 ang inyong Radio Ronda.
The ability to smile, chew, and even blink our eyes are some of the things that our face can do that we take for granted. But if you're infected with shingles, you are at risk of a rare condition called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, also known as herpes zoster oticus, a condition that is characterized by facial paralysis. A famous international music artist is currently experiencing this very rare condition. So in this episode, we will discuss what causes Ramsay-Hunt syndrome and the treatments for this disorder. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk, only on CNN Philippines. Today we will learn more about Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, a disorder that causes facial nerves to go into paralysis along with other symptoms. Our guests are here today to explain more about Ramsay-Hunt. With us is Dr. Cristel Medina. She's an infectious disease specialist from the University of Santo Tomas Hospital. Also with us is Dr. Christine Ann Carandang Chacon. She's a neurologist from the Makati Medical Center. Now, we'll start off with Dr. Cristel. When we hear the word syndrome, it's not just one entity. Kumbaga, it's a collection, actually, of certain problems. And this is the same case with Ramsay-Hunt. Could you explain a little bit more what this collection of problems is when it comes to Ramsay-Hunt syndrome?
First and foremost, when we speak of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, it is a manifestation of the reactivation of your varicella zoster virus. So, when we speak of chickenpox or the varicella or bulutong tubig and herpes zoster or shingles, this is oftentimes caused by your varicella zoster virus or your VZV. Now, when we speak of shingles, shingles is the localized entity of the reactivation of your varicella zoster virus.
For Ramsay-Hunt mismo, per se, what are some of the characteristics of this syndrome?
So for the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, actually, it is the affectation of primarily your cranial nerve 7 or your facial nerve, particularly the geniculate ganglion. And sometimes it can spread to the affectation of your cranial nerve 8. It is actually a triad of having painful vesicular lesion over the outer portion of the ear, or what you call the pinna. There is the loss of the taste over the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and there is the ipsilateral facial palsy. That is actually the triad of the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome.
This is some of the characteristics of what someone with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome might have. Because according to studies, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome happens when the shingles virus, as mentioned earlier, affects the facial nerve of a person. Now, for those who aren't familiar with shingles, what is the connection of shingles and that of Ramsay-Hunt?
Shingles actually is what we call herpes zoster, and herpes zoster and the varicella, they are caused by your specific varicella zoster virus. Now, what happens is that when a person becomes infected with the varicella, and after the bout of that infection, that virus will not be eliminated from a person's body. Eventually, that virus will remain dormant or inactive over the different nerve endings. And then after some time, let's say after how many years, once the immune system dampens, there is a reactivation to a localized entity called the herpes zoster. The reactivation can actually happen. The usual site of shingles actually is found on the torso. However, there are some instances that they happen over other nerve endings.
We heard about reactivation. We heard about previously having chickenpox. Let's explain that, Christine. Let's explain reactivation. Paano ito nangyayari? What causes this reactivation?
When you're infected with chickenpox, it affects basically your skin area, no? And then it enters basically the sensory nerves. And then parang it becomes latent in the ganglia area, no? So usually the ganglia, you can find them along adjacent to the spinal cord. But in this case, magsiseed siya dun sa ganglia ng facial nerve. That's why for years it can stay dormant, and then sometimes when we become parang more susceptible to having infection, nagkakaroon ng reactivation, and that's when the shingles come out.
There comes a point where someone who has had chickenpox before, there comes a point in their life where they are more susceptible to infection. Does this have something to do with the immune system ng tao?
Yes, so pagka down yung immune system, a person is more susceptible to having the reactivation of the shingles.
When it comes to Ramsay-Hunt, a very prominent entertainer, artist was affected by this, and it's all in the news. How bad can Ramsay-Hunt be?
So it can be really, really painful, causing patients to be debilitated and unable to perform their activities of daily living. But otherwise, as long as the pain is controlled, the patient can still do the usual activities and even work, no?
Dr. Christine, let's talk about one of the key components of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, yun yung facial paralysis. A lot of our viewers may see this facial paralysis. They also see it in other conditions such as stroke, even Bell's palsy. Pareho lang ba ito? This type of paralysis seen? How can one differentiate Ramsay-Hunt syndrome from someone having a stroke or someone having Bell's palsy?
We have to understand that when it's stroke, the problem is coming from a higher area such as the brain. Unlike sa Bell's palsy and sa Ramsay-Hunt, the problem is with the nerve itself. So if the patient is able to raise both his eyebrows and wrinkle his forehead equally, pero may paralysis ng lower half ng face, then it is more compatible actually with stroke. If it's Bell's palsy or Ramsay-Hunt, the patient is unable to raise one of his eyebrows, and when he wrinkles his forehead, there are fewer wrinkles on the affected side. So in both cases ng Bell's palsy and Ramsay-Hunt, the patients present with one-sided facial weakness, both the upper and the lower. However, sa Ramsay-Hunt nga, as said before, there's the presence naman ng painful rashes over the distribution of the facial nerve, the ear or the hard palate or sa tongue.
Dr. Tel, balikan natin yung reactivation a little bit. You mentioned how this is a reactivation of the chickenpox or the virus that causes chickenpox. A lot of our viewers may have had chickenpox in the past. They might be asking the question, magkakaroon din ba ako eventually ng Ramsay-Hunt? What are some of the risk factors of reactivation?
We have to bear in mind that the reactivation of the herpes zoster depends on the balance between the virus and the patient factor. So reactivation is mainly influenced. Number one actually is age. Second is if there are other diseases that makes a person immunocompromised. And third, of course, if these patients are receiving medications that dampen their immune system, like chemotherapy or they're having steroids. But amongst all the mentioned factors, actually it is the age that accounts for the major factor that influences the reactivation of your herpes zoster.
When we return, we'll delve deeper in understanding what causes Ramsay-Hunt syndrome and what can happen if this is not treated correctly. Only here on MedTalk Health Talk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni Bay.
And your host of Sulit to Win It, Mr. Luis Manzano.
Tanong ng bayan, bakit sulit ang BioFlu? And the top answers are, dahil kaya ang flu, lagnat, sipon, headache, body pain, ubo from postnasal drip.
Ang dami!
Teka, may pahabol pa. Sore throat. Sulit! Winner ka sa BioFlu. Sulit dahil kaya all. Babangon ka sa BioFlu. Unilab yan. Phenylephrine HCl perfenamine maleate paracetamol is the generic name of BioFlu. If symptoms persist, consult your doctor.
Protektahi ang imong mga mata batok sa delikado ug makadaot nga ultraviolet nga silaw sa adlaw ug uban pa. Pinaagi sa pagsulob og eksakto nga prescription sa antiyohos o antipara. Likay ang mga simptomas sama sa hanap nga pananaw sa layo o duol nga basahon, sakit sa ulo ug uban pa nga makaapekto sa atong kahimsog nga ang hinungdan depekto sa atong mga mata. Alang sa kumpleto nga primary eye care, contact lenses, fashion eyewear, computer eyeglasses, sunglasses, accessories ug uban pa, adto kita sa AG Buñuel Optical Clinic. Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic nagpahinumdum kanato nga ang kahimsog sa atong mga mata usa ka prioridad nga angay ipa-check up kausa matag tuig aron pagsiguro nga luwas kita sa piligrong mga sakit. Pinaagi sa lisensyado og qualified optometrists nga maoy mo prescribe sa eksaktong kagamitan ug kung primary eye care ang paghisgutan. Duaw lang silang buhatan sa 3636 sa Nicolas Street, Surigao City ug adunay ilang extension office sa Aurelianida Street, Cantilan, Surigao del Sur. Ayaw kalimti higala, AG Buñuel Optical Clinic.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic doon na branch dito sa lungsod sa Dapa sa may Lupis Haina Street, Poblasyon Dapa, Surigao del Norte.
Ang AG Buñuel Optical Clinic dinhi sa siyudad ng Surigao no transfer na sa bagong location sa Nicolas Street Ragyahapon, tapad sa Garcia Hotel at Bang sa Unicity. Ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated na silang bagong location sa Dalan, Burgos ning atong syudad. Mahimo niyong tawagan sa telephone number 231-7478 or 826-3663. Mga produkto nga inyong mapalit, genuine, Makita Power Tools sama sa planer, drill, grinder, Triton paints, construction supplies, angle bars, flat bars, GI pipes, automotive spare parts, Firefly electrical devices sama sa switches, bulbs ug outlets. Adto ang Riverside Parts Master Incorporated sa ilang bagong pwesto sa Dalan, Burgos ning syudad. Makahangyo ka o makabarato pagyod diha sa Riverside Parts Master Incorporated.
Aniya na ang food supplement nga kumpleto, sakto o aprobado. Ang Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Maayo alang sa pag-maintain sa imong maayong panglawas, kahimsog ug kapiskay sa mga pamati. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Pakusog sa enerhiya ug stamina, mupalikon sa imong immune system. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Andam sa pagpakigbatok sa mga nagkadaiyang balatian. Musulay pa baka sa uban, diri na kita sa kasaligan. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. Calabo Plus Herbal Capsule. A quality product of Jesser Marketing. Palit na karon sa mga butika.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Nakakatulong iwasan ang iba't ibang uri ng sakit tulad ng diabetes, arthritis, rheumatism, hypertension, cancer, urinary tract infections o UTI, respiratory tract infections tulad ng ubo, sipon, lagnat, heart attack, constipation, fatigue, kidney, lung problem, premature aging, memory loss at depression. EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Buhay at makulay ang buhay sa EXL Makabuhay.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Mapalit sa pinakadool nga butika o drugstore sa inyong lugar.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. Earlier on the program, we discussed what RHS, or Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, was and its differences between Bell's palsy as well as stroke. Now let's go into the virus that causes this condition and what type of symptoms can be seen. Now, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome typically occurs when there is a reactivation of the varicella-zoster virus and it affects the facial nerve or cranial nerve 7. Now, varicella-zoster is the same virus that may cause chickenpox as well as shingles, meaning those who have had either of these conditions are also at risk of developing RHS. Let's talk to Dr. Christine. How bad can Ramsay-Hunt syndrome be? Itong facial paralysis, can this be permanent kapag hindi ito naagapan, hindi ito na-treat kagad?
Yes, it can be permanent. And most of the patients actually can have some improvement of sa movement ng facial muscles nila, but it can only improve up to a certain extent. And if it will improve, it is quite unlikely na it would go back to 100% of what the facial muscles were.
Now, Dr. Christine, let's talk about the other syndromes. You mentioned about a rash. We mentioned about pain that you mentioned earlier, which is really significant. Let's talk about some of the things which may not make that person who is infected with Ramsay-Hunt function properly. Because aside from that, there are other symptoms as well when it comes to hearing, when it comes to balance. Could you talk about this?
Since it affects the ear, so the ear is actually the organ for balance, no? When one is infected with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, the balance can be affected. So it is really difficult because a patient can experience vertigo. So it is very uncomfortable and one may be even more susceptible to having falls, no?
Now, Dr. Tel, let's talk about the virus once again. A lot of our viewers will hear herpes. Is this the same herpes as that of the sexually transmitted infectious kind?
They have the same family. They come from the herpes viridae family. But as you can see, the manifestation, actually both their manifestation would present with lesions having fluid inside, or what we call the vesicular lesion. They belong to the same family. However, the mode of transmission is actually different from the one we call the herpes simplex, and the one is called the varicella zoster or the herpes zoster.
When it comes to those with RHS, contagious ba sila? Those with this virus are similar to shingles, which is infectious. Are those with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, are they infectious to others as well?
Yes, but the dictum is this. You cannot get shingles from someone who has shingles because, again, shingles per se is just a reactivation of your varicella zoster virus. But herpes zoster, let's say in the form of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, you can transmit the varicella zoster virus causing chickenpox, meaning bulutong, in contrast to our varicella naive, or meaning those patients who never had varicella before, or those who never had varicella vaccine. So in short, it is still contagious, especially to this subset of population.
Now, as mentioned earlier, the facial paralysis in Ramsay-Hunt can hamper one's ability to blink, smile, as well as chew. Now, there's also the debilitating pain in the ear or in the face that can affect one's hearing as well as their balance. Now, Dr. Christine, let's talk about someone with Ramsay-Hunt, how they can function in their lives. First of all, let's start with the obvious. Bakit isang side lang ng face ang affected, Dr. Christine?
Yeah, because it's very localized to the nerve. Actually, it is even possible to have both, but that would just be from pure coincidence, no? So, and the nerves naman are not directly communicating or directly connected to each other. That's why only one side of the face is affected.
Dr. Tel, let's talk about that because I will be talking about how infectious disease specialists or neurologists would approach treatment on this. One with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome may present maybe one symptom of it or maybe a lot more. But when it comes to treatment, what is the general approach to treating someone with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome?
So generally in treating Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, so number one, we have to give prompt management of antivirals. We have acyclovir and we have valacyclovir. Actually, for immunocompromised patient, it is prudent that we give it in the IV form. Likewise, to lessen the inflammation, we give steroids in patients with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. And of course, for the debilitating pain that the vesicles may present, we should likewise give pain medication. We can give gabapentin or such just to lessen the pain of these patients.
But in terms of time frame, how long, how short are we talking here bago gumaling ang isang taong may RHS?
It depends actually on the immune status of the patient. If the patient is immunocompetent, actually the manifestation of the rashes will take around 1 to 2 weeks, and then eventually it will crust. And then if prompt treatment or management will happen, then the other neurologic symptoms will eventually improve over time. However, if the patient is an immunocompromised individual, the persistence of the rashes may take around 2 to 4 weeks. Actually, some patients may be longer than that. And then the symptoms or the neurological symptoms sometimes may persist for longer periods of time. It really does depend on, one, the immune status of the patient, and second, the promptness of the treatment that is being given to the patient.
Tel, you mentioned earlier that one of the biggest risk factors for reactivation nitong varicella virus is the advancing age of the patient. But one of the more famous entertainers was affected by this, and he's only in his late 20s, I believe. So what are some of the risk factors that a young person may have a reactivation or may have Ramsay-Hunt syndrome? Dr. Tel.
Ramsay-Hunt syndrome in a very young individual is actually rare. It's very rare because the immunocompetence of a person in early years is competent enough to guard someone from the reactivation of the virus. So the number one thing that can dampen an immune response of a patient in younger years would be a lot of stress. Actually, a lot of stress. There are some case reports. Even psychological stress can actually reactivate herpes zoster virus. Likewise, if the patient will have other unknown immunocompromising condition, that can be a risk factor for the reactivation.
Coming up, we'll discuss more treatment measures as well as preventive measures against RHS. Only on MedTalk Health Talk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni Bay.
Maayong balita sa tanan sa atong panginahanglan sa panimalay, mga gamit, ingon man mga dekorasyon, pwede na natong mapalit diha sa Wellington Bazaar. Anausab sa Wellington Bazaar ang mga bestidahon, karsunison, plain t-shirt, plastic chair, floor mat, mantel, banig, folding bed, habol, mosketero, trapal, lideret, basketball, stuffed toys ug mga dulaan sa bata. Ang Wellington Bazaar ana magalagad kanato sa Dalan Kaymo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Wellington Bazaar, gikan sa mga kawani ug tigdumala sa Wellington Bazaar. Mayong adlaw alang kaninyo. Wellington Bazaar, sukiyon ta sa kanunay.
Uy, Day! Naunsa man ka, Day?
Day, kanang glisod na mo kakita, Day. Uy!
Sus, naunsa ba ka? Uy nga, katong ni aging bulan. Okay pa man ka? Naunsa Day karon?
Laot siguro ni sigunit aning cellphone ka ng si computer, Day.
Da, mo lagi na akong ingon ba? Uy, Day, nakoy balita para sa imuha. Gamit og Lutein Plus, uy!
Lutein Plus?
Oo, tungod ang Lutein Plus, Day, duna kini 13 ka ingredients. Hindi lang kini para sa mata, kundi sa imuhang tibuok lawas. Nga maka-assist pod sa imuhang anxiety ug depression.
Ang Lutein Plus usa ka award-winning brand nga gikan pa sa New Zealand.
The award-winning supplements from Clean Green, New Zealand Omega Plus nag-support sa heart and blood system. Ang Lutein Plus ay 13 ka mga ingredients lakip ng vitamins A and C. Dili lamang kung maradyaw sa itong pananaw, nag-support sa bini sa ato intero lawas. Ning panahon nga jari kita kuman sa COVID-19 pandemic, kinahanglan magpabilin kitang himsog inom sa Lutein Plus, Omega Plus, and Primrose Plus of Gel. Inintanan available sa New Family Drug, Palma Drug, sa Aquarian Pharmacy.
Pagdalaga og ulitaw na gani, kinahanglan limpyo ug hamis kanunay ang kutis. Gamit og Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap, pampahamis, pampaputi ug pampabata sa panit. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Mao kini ang tubag alang sa mga teenager nga gusto makaangkon og nindot nga kutis. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Karisma Kojic Soap. Ang sikreto sa mga gwapa o gwapo. Karisma Kojic Soap. Mabalit sa inyong mga suking butika.
Mga Surigaonon, ana-anay maayong lugar na adtuan ang Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop nga nahimutang sa Dalan Borromeo ning Dakbayan sa Surigao. Anaa kanila ang barato na mga gamit para sa pagpagwapa sa inyong banyo, kusina o tibuok balay. Nagtanyag sila sa mga packages, sa faucet, wash basin ug toilet bowl with complete fittings na swak sa inyong budget. Sa Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop, daghan kay kapilian, mga bag-ong mga designs ug dekalidad ang mga produkto. Interior Hub Home Furnishing Shop, Borromeo Street, Surigao City. Owned and managed by Earl Brian Palma. Contact number 0945 30-60-648.
EXL Makabuhay Plus Health and Wellness for God's Glory.
Nakay pasyente ma'am no imong isuon o sa gibati ato ma'am.
Ang gibati ato niya do ikalihok yung mga lawas, ang ulo lang makalihok, kamot dili, wala na di nakadaw yung lawas, bugak na nakaayo. Mandi maasay ang tiil. Makabuhay plus lang jud tuloy ang sa Ginoo. Samsud nakalakaw na di siya do. Primero ina niya pero hinga na diya pamati mga lihok na pagkatudis makakaon na siya, makagulit na kasara. Makabuhay plus lang jud kaluy ang sa Ginoo Dios. Tingin pa na namo nakakita ni ani sa mong balay na nagmotor na jud.
Sige pangalan nimo ba?
Charmin po, Dagaguri.
Makabuhay! EXL Makabuhay Plus Dietary Supplement. Mapalit sa pinakadool nga butika o drugstore sa inyong lugar.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. Earlier, we discussed the symptoms and possible reasons why Ramsay-Hunt syndrome occurs in people of all age groups. Now, let's delve into possible preventive measures that we can apply when diagnosed with this condition. Now, Dr. Christine, talking about Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, when someone has RHS, typically they are in their advanced age. Can RHS even aggravate other comorbid conditions that person may have?
Well, that is a possibility because a lot of these patients in this age group, especially if you're 50 years old and above, you're more susceptible to having heart conditions, kidney conditions, even stroke. No? So what happens is that if this is something that is very stressful to you, that is causing you pain, that is causing you worries about your facial about your aesthetics and your balance and everything, if this is a major contribution to your stress in life, this can do constant BP elevation, and then that would lead to possible complications.
Now, Dr. Tel, since we're talking about further modes of treatment as well as prevention here, there is a vaccine for varicella, for chickenpox, in order to prevent it from happening. Is this vaccine also good enough to prevent Ramsay-Hunt syndrome?
Yes, definitely. According to some studies, the rate of acquiring varicella after a community exposure in a person who is vaccinated is just between 1 to 5%, comparing it to a group of unvaccinated individuals who can have as much as 60 to 70% of possibility of having varicella.
Now, Dr. Christine, let's talk about treatment for Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. Kapag ito ay isang virus, a lot of our viewers are thinking, is this self-limiting, just like the other viruses? What can they do in order to prevent any further complications down the road?
RHS is actually treated using antiviral medications such as acyclovir. These are the more common ones you will hear, no? Acyclovir, famciclovir, and valacyclovir. And for the pain, it can usually be controlled by usual over-the-counter non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications such as ibuprofen. And then also your doctor can prescribe corticosteroids such as prednisone in order to reduce the nerve inflammation. And this is most effective if it is started within the first 3 days from symptom onset.
Now, Dr. Christine, are there any things that our viewers can do to try and prevent maybe the reactivation? What can they do in their day-to-day to improve the immune system, prevent reactivation?
Okay, definitely you have to take care of yourself by proper diet. Of course, taking in as much as possible green leafy vegetables and a balanced diet of good carbohydrates, protein, and all the sources of your vitamins and minerals. And exercise is very important. The usual cardio exercises recommended, such as walking, running, or biking, that you can do for, let's say, 30 minutes every day for 5 days a week. That would be very, very helpful at keeping your immune system at its peak.
And Dr. Tel, how about you? Do you have any advice for our viewers to keep the immune system up in order to prevent not just chickenpox or Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, but other infectious diseases as well?
If you encounter an individual with a very suspecting lesion or questionable lesion, in this time and age that we are likewise guarding our country from the threats of monkeypox, when in doubt, just seek consult. So if this is indeed herpes zoster or particularly Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, we can give appropriate management which can lessen the morbidity of the patient. We always have to follow the minimum precautionary measures. Let's get our vaccines updated. And lastly, as cliche and basic as it may sound, let's be cautious in staying healthy.
With that, thank you very much, Dr. Cristel Medina and Dr. Christine Ann Carandang Chacon, for being with us today and sharing your expertise about Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.